Hey everyone, how are you? Here's Marla with Read Aloud. Story time. It's actually Cuban Goddess with story time. Fun. And I wanted to read The Great Reset because it's an amazing book filled with lots of enlightening ideas. Like the fact that in the book on page 72, it says the fate of the US dollar. Really? So they want to kill a dollar or something? That's pretty bad, huh? I'm also doing a puzzle. And it's driving me nuts. It's 1,000. Sorry. My little puzzle went away. Okay, so for decades, the U.S. has enjoyed the exorbitant privilege of retaining the global currency reserve, a status that has long been a perk of imperial might and an economic elixir. So we have enjoyed an exorbitant privilege. Exorbitant. Hey, wait a minute. Can somebody really quickly go into the dictionary and tell me what exorbitant means? I mean, exorbitant. Oh my goodness. They quote, and they even had to quote it, quote and unquote, exorbitant privilege. To a considerable extent, American power and prosperity have been built and reinforced by the global trust in the dollar and the willingness of customers abroad to hold it, most often in the form of U.S. government bonds. The fact that so many countries and foreign institutions want to hold dollars as a store of value and as an instrument of exchange for trade has anchored its status as a global reserve currency. This has enabled the U.S. to borrow cheaply abroad and benefit from low interest rates at home, which in turn has allowed Americans to consume beyond their means. Oh, we cannot have that. No. Americans, we are the free country. We cannot borrow and consume beyond our means. We cannot have an abundance of stuff at home. Oh no. They have to control us and they have to kill the dollar. But now, that's not good. No way. It's not good. It has also made large recent U.S. government deficits possible, permitted the U.S. to run substantial trade deficits, reduced the exchange rate risk, and made the U.S. financial markets more liquid. As the core of the U.S. dollar status as a reserve currency lies a critical issue of trust. Non-Americans who hold dollars trust that the United States will protect both its own interest by managing sensibly its economy and the rest of the world as far as the U.S. dollar is concerned by managing sensibly its currency, like providing dollar liquidity to the global financial system efficiency rapidly. Now, why would the dollar be so trusted? It's because of our free market system. Don't you agree? Isn't that the obvious? That because we are free and because we have laws that we consent to, that we value, and that hold our behaviors accountable, people trust American dollar? Isn't that what? So why do you want to kill the U.S. dollar? Why is our government spitting out a ton of stimulus bills? I mean, giving away money to us when when we don't have any money to give away? Shouldn't the government be taking this to heart and saying, you know what, we need to keep being the greatest superpower in the whole entire world? I mean, what I'm reading here is that they don't like that. That doesn't go with the global reset. We need to kill the dollar and have our own dollar so that people will just spend with one currency. So, right? I don't know. Is that what I'm saying? Can you comment below? I mean, this is like bizarre. I'm not an economist, and I know legal law, and I know politics, and I know government, and it took me a long time to really get up to par on my knowledge, to really be able to understand what's going on. But that first paragraph is enlightening. So the other thing about this is, I don't want to read the whole thing. You got to read it. So that's on a macro level. And I believe this chapter, so the other thing that's really interesting is societal reset. And I'm just going to read a snippet of a few lines of the first paragraph, because it's a long paragraph. But it says, historically, pandemics have tested societies to their core. The 2020 COVID-19 crisis will be no exception. Comparable to the economy, as we just saw, and geopolitics, as we will see in the next chapter. The societal upheaval unleashed by COVID-19 will last for years and possibly generations. The most immediate and visible impact is that many governments will be taken to task with a lot of anger directed at those policymakers and political figures that have appeared inadequate or ill-prepared in terms of their response to dealing with COVID-19. As Henry Kissinger. Now, Henry Kissinger has been, I think he's an economist from the 1970s. Now, don't quote me on that one, because I don't remember, but I think Kissinger was a very famous economist, politician in the 1970s. He has a book out. He observed, nations cohere and flourish on the belief that their institutions can foresee calamity, arrest its impact, and restore stability. When the COVID-19 pandemic is over, many countries' institutions will be perceived as having failed. We're not going to fail. Why? Because America is awesome. This will be particularly true for some rich countries endowed with sophisticated health systems and strong assets in research. We have the best system for research. And one of the reasons we have the best system for research is because we let the people decide their health. In America, we consent to law, and we decide, we have the freedom to decide what we need to be healthy. And we trust that our medical industry will do the research and give us the research results so that we can make our own decision. That's what makes America great. We are not a universal healthcare system because, and if we were, we would have a weak research. The only country in the whole world that has a good research base is, I think it's Switzerland or Sweden. But they have small populations in comparison to America. See what I'm saying? So they have a good research, and they have also good health care. But their population is small in comparison to ours. And we have something that no other country has. We consent to laws, and we have the freedom to decide for ourselves what is going to be the best for our health. The government does not decide that for us. So, That's why it's a problem when the government tells us that we need to wear masks, that we need that, and tries to impose the vaccines by bullying us to wear the vaccine. And even if the government says, well, those who have vaccination, that's a form of bullying. Okay? Those who have vaccinations don't need to wear the masks anymore. And then shut the hell up. The masks, it's our decision to wear the mask or not. It's our decision whether we want to risk getting sick or not. It is not up to us to make people comfortable. Do you hear me? We're free. Okay? It is we the people who govern our lives, not the government. Okay? That's the problem with COVID-19 in America. We consent to laws, and that's what we do. Okay? And the government has to just shut up and give us the good research so that we can make good decisions based on that research result for ourselves. Okay? It is up to our doctors to give us the facts and the evidence so that we can make the decision for ourselves. It is not the government's job. It is not the doctor's job to tell us you gotta wear a mask because you gotta make other people comfortable. I don't freaking think so. It's freedom over comfort. And I value freedom over comfort. Okay? I will go out and I will be free. Free. Do you hear me? And it is nobody's right to impose something on you. Free. Because we have inalienable rights that come from God. Whatever God you believe in. I don't really care. I believe in God. But you know what? I don't really care what you believe in. Just don't impose your belief on me. Do you hear me? Anyways, this is a really good book. And I'm going to stop right there because it's already 12 minutes. And I like to ramble on and on because, that's the way I am. But this societal, social refers to an interaction between individuals or groups of individuals, while societal is the adjective that relates to society as a whole. It even talks about inequality. An inequalities reset. This would be like Kamala Harris's equity, right? So one serious misleading cliche about the coronavirus resides in the metaphor of COVID as a great leveler, unquote. The reality is quite the opposite. COVID-19 has exacerbated pre-existing conditions of inequality whenever it strikes. As such, it is not a leveler, quote and unquote, neither medically nor economically or socially or psychologically. The pandemic is in reality a great unequalizer, quote unquote, that has compounded disparities in income, wealth, and opportunity. It has laid bare for all to see not only the vast numbers of people in the world who are economically and socially vulnerable, but also the depths and degree of their fragility, a phenomenon even more prevalent in countries with low and non-existent social safety nets or weak families and social bonds. This situation, of course, predates the pandemic, but as we observed, though other global issue, the virus acted as an amplifier, forcing us to recognize and acknowledge the severity of the problem relating to inequality, formerly brushed aside by too many for too long. So let's see what it says really quickly. Let me read the part where it says this inequality is because governments around the world control people, and they don't allow people to control their lives. Around the world, the only country that has laws that protect our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is America. We are the only country that is equal in opportunity. And anybody who comes here has that equal opportunity to make their lives as they feel fit. But around the world, governments control that opportunity. And not everyone has the opportunity to make their money. Because number one, most governments take an awful lot from the people by way of taxes. In America, taxes are meant just to help the government, not support the government, not make them rich, okay? So here in America, the government is not supposed to give you something. We are supposed to go out and find a way to make that something, okay? So in America, we Americans need to start thinking again, okay? Because we do not deserve anything from the government. The government doesn't have money. And if we keep on asking the government for money, guess what's going to happen? We're going to be like giving the government 70% of our income, our hard-earned income, by way of payroll taxes, just to support the government. Is that what you want? Or do you want to support yourself? The government can't support you. You are not entitled to any of it. But then the government is not entitled to your money either. What they're entitled to do is to run the government, manage the government responsibly. And I question whether the government is running the government responsibly. I don't think so, because we have morons up in the government trying to get rid of our freedoms. Like in my state, we have these laws, law enforcement laws, and they want to control the guns in our state. One of the bills that we were discussing yesterday was on proper storage of our guns. Hello? How are you going to know how we store our guns? Are you going to come into my house and ask me questions? Where do you store your guns? And do you, hello? That bill is so moronic that right now, after I finish this, I'm going to go right to my legislators and tell them how moronic it is. And I write to my legislators frequently. I put them on my email list, and I send them stuff, just like I do on my customers. So I send them stuff because I want them to think. And I'm there. And I want them to know that I'm watching. The other bill in our state that was kind of a concern is they want to, if a gun is lost or stolen, they want to confiscate it. So pretty much, if your gun is lost or stolen, that is their right to take it from you. You don't own it anymore. So this is our right. When I read Abraham Lincoln, he used to go out and he had a rifle, and he would go out and he would shoot game and pheasants, and he would bring it home and have something to eat. You know? We have morons working in government, destroying our freedoms. And if we don't stand up right now and make our voices heard to our representatives locally, we're going to lose our freedoms. We've got to take back our government at the local level. And if you're like in a city, you make sure that your voice is heard at the city level. Like when I was in Florida, Tallahassee is really far away. You can't just drive and be right there like you are in Denver, which is one of the reasons I love Denver. I moved to Denver because we have great mountains, and it's like so tranquil and so scenic. And my capital is like a minute away, and I could just be right there and talk to my representatives, or I could just send them an email and see if we can meet, or I could listen in on the bills that they're collaborating with in their committees, and then send them an email. Yeah, email seems to really work with these representatives. So if you could get a hold of all the representatives at the U.S. level and the state level and the county level and the city level, more power to you. And just send them email every week. Let them know you're watching. Go to your state legislature website and see what bills are being heard, and be there, be active, even if you can't go to the Capitol. You can still listen to almost any bill, any discussion online, because almost all the states have the capability to have people watch the bills. And if we don't do this and we don't take back our right to rule ourselves, to self-govern ourselves, we're going to lose our freedoms in a few years. So that's what I'm going to say for today. And maybe in a video I'll come back and I'll give you, oh, wait a minute, before I go. Social unrest. Look what it says here. One of the most profound dangers facing the post-pandemic era is social unrest. Is BLM causing social unrest? Okay, in some extreme cases, it could lead to societal disintegration and political collapse. Isn't that what BLM is trying to do here? Is to disintegrate Americans and cause a collapse of our society so that we can end our self-governing rule? Think about that. Countless studies, articles, and warnings have highlighted this particular risk based on the obvious observation that when people have no jobs, no income, and no prospects for a better life, they often resort to violence. What are our Democrat governments doing right now? They are causing us to stay home and get paid by the government so that we get mad enough to take the streets and cause social unrest? I don't know. You tell me. That's my logical conclusion. The following quote, listen to this. The following quote captures the essence of the problem. It applies to the U.S., but its conclusions are valid for most countries around the world. See how what Schwab is doing in essence here is he is telling you exactly what their plans and their goals are by writing this book. And if you're a good reader, you could read between the lines and see how they're trying to destroy democracy. Those who are, here's a quote. Those who are left hopeless, jobless, and without assets could easily turn against those who are better off. Already, some 30% of Americans have zero negative wealth. If more people emerge from the current crisis with neither money, nor jobs, nor access to health care, and if these people become desperate and angry, such scenes as the recent escape of prisoners in Italy or the looting that followed Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in 2005 might become commonplace. If governments have to resort to using paramilitary or military force to quell, for example, riots and attacks on property, society could begin to disintegrate. Now you have to wonder, is that the goal that they want here? By giving us money, stimulus money, to make us stay home? They want to disintegrate society. Don't you see it, Americans? Don't you see it? Read between the lines. I mean, they want to cause a collapse. A total collapse so that we could start anew in a new world order. Well, before the pandemic engulfed the world, social unrest had been on the rise globally. So the risk is not new, but has been amplified by COVID-19. You have to wonder if this COVID-19 was planned and somebody made the virus to cause this social unrest. There are different ways to define what constitutes social unrest, but over the past 2 years, more than 100 significant anti-government protests have taken place around the world, in rich and poor countries alike, from the Yellow Vests riots in France to the demonstrations against strong men in countries such as Bolivia, Iran, and Sudan. Most of the latter were suppressed by brutal crackdowns, and many went into hibernation like the global economy, when governments forced their population into lockdown to contain the pandemic. This forcing of lockdowns is unconstitutional in America. Our government cannot force you to lock down against your wishes. But after the interdiction to gather in groups and take to the streets is lifted, it is hard to imagine that old grievances and temporarily suppressed social disquiet will not erupt again. So what he's telling you here is, now that our masks have been lifted here in Colorado, that there is going to be groups that take to the streets and gather old grievances, and temporarily suppressed social disquietness will not erupt again, possibly with renewed strength. So where was I? It is hard to imagine that old grievances and temporarily suppressed social disquiet will not erupt again, possibly with renewed strength. So what he's saying is that he can't imagine that now that it's lifted, that we're going to be calm and go back to normal. No. The new normal is going to be that we're going to have more riots. That's what I think. But you could comment below and let me know if I'm accurate in my reading. It took me like 30 years to become proficient in English. And it took me another 5 years to become proficient in Spanish. The more proficient I became in English, the better I became in Spanish. Now, that might be hard to believe, but it isn't, because I was raised in a dual language society, and I learned Spanish and English at the same time. But I wasn't getting the education. My public school education was so poor. It was so poor that it left my English on the floor. And as a result, my Spanish was also on the floor. So the better I got at reading, the better I became in Spanish too. Is that hard to believe or not? That's why I really recommend that you get Usborne Books and More, because they're the best books in the world, and they're going to help support your children's education. Personal tragedies will occur, fomenting anger, resentment, and exasperations in different social groups, including the unemployed, the poor, the migrant, the prisoners, the homeless, all those left out. How could all this pressure not end in an eruption? Social phenomena often exhibits the same characteristics as pandemics, and as observed in previous pages, tipping point apply equally to both. When poverty, a sense of being disenfranchised, and powerlessness, such as certain tipping points, disruptive social action often becomes the option of the last resort. Okay, I'm not going to read any more from it, but just think about what I just read right there and comment below. I'd love to know your. Okay, so the other interesting is the return of big government. Okay, our government has been growing exponentially since 1920. Since Woodrow Wilson expanded the government, and since FDR further expanded the government and gave us entitlement. That's where most Americans feel they're entitled to receive something from the government because they've been paying into it, but you have no entitlement. And until you realize that the government is taking unnecessarily from you and making you poor, because that's what happens. The more taxes go up, the poorer you become. The poorer the poor become. So the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer because, and this is what I learned from Kiyosaki, he's a really good man. So if you have never read his books, you've got to go out and get Robert Kiyosaki's books. All of them are really, really good. So this is why the rich get richer. It's because the rich find the loopholes within the taxes to offset the taking from the government. So they know how to give enough to the government and how to keep for themselves what they need. So if you want to be rich, you're going to follow the trend of the rich, but it's going to become harder and harder to become rich because the rich don't become rich overnight. The rich become rich by slowly building their business up. And so it's going to become harder because the smaller businesses are going to incorporate the problems and the taxes, and they're not going to have the resources to find those loopholes to be like the rich. So the rich are going to become, it's going to be smaller number of people becoming rich at the top, and the vast majority of people are going to become poor. So bear that in mind, that the bigger the government gets, the less freedom we have, the more poor we become, and the less ability to decide for ourselves our fate. So in America, we govern ourselves by the laws that government puts on us. And if we keep consenting to these laws that take away our freedom, well, guess what's going to happen? The less democracy we're going to have in our country. So start paying attention. If you have never paid attention to politics and have never gone and talked to your representatives, you've got to start speaking up and you've got to start talking. That's the only way that we're going to make our country better. In other words, okay, so the return of big government. In other words, in the words of John Micklethwait and Adrian Woodridge, the COVID-19 pandemic has made government important again. Not just powerful again, powerful again. Okay, in America, the government is not powerful. We are. Look at those once mighty companies begging for help. Oh, give me money, this pandemic. Well, who's getting all the stimulus money? It's not me. I'm not getting the stimulus money. I'm a small little guy here trying to sell books so that I can offset and have money to buy for my son's education. It's not me. I didn't get any stimulus money. It didn't go to me at all. But the big governments around, the big businesses around the world are the ones getting the money. But also vital again. It matters enormously whether your country has a good health service, competent bureaucrats, and sound finances. Okay, The competent bureaucrats are supposed to just manage the government. We pay them to manage efficiently the government. We don't have competent bureaucrats. We have idiots running the government. Okay? And not only that, we have idiots who aren't supposed to be in certain positions because they're not of this country. They are citizens of other countries. And they have an allegiance problem because when they deal with other countries, their allegiance to their other countries will help their countries be better off. Got it? I'm not gonna name names because I don't want YouTube to disable my account here. I really like talking. Okay. Good government is the difference between living and dying. No, good government is the difference between self-governing and is between freedom and slavery. Good government is the difference between freedom and slavery. Learn that lesson well. The more government we have, the more powerful our government becomes, the less freedom we have, the more enslaved we will be, and the more poor we will become. Got it? One of the great lessons of the past 5 centuries in Europe and America is this. Acute crises contribute to boasting the power of the state. Acute crises contribute to boasting the power of the state. So the more in crisis we become, the more our government gets. The bigger our government gets, the less freedom we have. The more enslaved we will be. Historians point to the fact that the rising fiscal resource of capitalist countries from the 18th century onward were always closely associated with the need to fight wars, particularly those that took place in distant countries and that required maritime capacities. Such was the case with the 7-Year War of 1756 through 1763, described as the first truly global war, and that involved all the great powers of Europe at the time. Since then, the response to major crises has always further consolidated power of the state, starting with taxation. And what did I tell you about taxes? An inherent and essential attribute of sovereignty, belonging as a matter of right to every independent government. So the government has a right to collect taxes? No. The federal government, they have no right to collect our taxes. The right belongs to the states. Each state has a right to collect taxes from its citizens, and each state was supposed to, in Article 1, give to the Union. The taxes in our government, they're supposed to apportion taxes responsibly. And I question whether they're apportioning taxes responsibly. Okay, it is not a right. It is taxation with representation, and they only have a right to collect taxes if we consent to that right. And right now, they don't have a right. They're making us poor. And we got to speak up. A few examples illustrating the point strongly suggests that this time, as in the past, taxation will increase. So what happens when taxes go up? Our income will go down. When taxes go up, we become poor. Okay? And the government gets bigger and fatter, and they start taking away our freedoms, and we cannot consent to that. In our government, we consent to law. And the more you consent, the more we lose our freedom. They have no right to take away our inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. Government does not give you a right. Our Creator does. We have freedom. We have freedom to express ourselves. We have freedom of speech. We have freedom to tell others and educate others on what's going on. We have freedom to own guns and to protest against the government. We have freedom. My son knows the Bill of Rights more than I do, but I don't know I'm in order. So freedom of gun, right to own guns. Oh, what is it? Quartering. I can't remember. I can't remember I'm in order. I have to look him up. But anyways, we have rights. Right to due process, a right to a fair trial, a right to the cop in Chavin. He didn't have a right to fair trial. So I feel bad for him because now he's a murderer, and I really question whether he is a murderer. So this is very enlightening right here. A few examples illustrating the point strongly suggest that this time, as the past, taxation will increase. As in the past, the social rationale and political justification underlying the increases will be based upon the narrative of the countries at war, only this time against an invisible enemy. And who's controlling the narrative right now in our country? Big tech. Big tech is censoring the narrative. We are not allowed to see the whole entire news and to get different perspectives from different news sources that we love and have always loved. Somebody is knocking at the door. But anyways, I'm gonna stop there. There are others, like the social contract. That's really cool. And what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll share that social contract in another video. Thank you very much. Bye.